Hey, I'm Pops, and I'm going to talk about Sandman. Sandman on Netflix. This has actually been something that I started a while ago and stopped and kind of just figured I'd kind of jump back in, but I've become very like apathetic. Like I don't really care to jump back in. I only really watched 2 episodes. So I want to do a review of those 2 episodes and kind of point to why I stopped watching it, why I don't really have a lot of interest moving forward, even though I'm this massive Sandman comic book fan. I mean, I remember buying issues 4 and 8, these key issues, and then a graphic novel. And then once I read that, then I was hooked and I went back and I had them all. And I had pretty much like, I had all of 1 through 50 and in graphic novels, read them regularly, really enjoyed it. It was kind of a cool comic book for me to kind of be a break from superhero stuff because it's this interesting mythological fantasy sci-fi universe. It's very interesting. Kind of having a different superhero take. My big thing is to Netflix, it's like I don't understand why you change certain things. And my point is, what I want to go through is they spend so much to try to be accurate to the comic book and the story and the basic theme and timelines of stuff. And then there's these massive radical character changes that really can't be for any other reason than social justice and political virtue signaling, because it's very glaring and jarring if you're a fan of the character and then it has these major abrupt changes. It doesn't make sense. And there's one in particular that it kind of happens in episode 2, and that's kind of where I stop because I also know other things are coming. So anyway, long story short, let me jump through the story really quick. It does actually follow the comic book pretty well as far as um, these are called the Endless, and there's one for different type of things. We'll get to that. Dream is the main character, Morpheus. He is the master of the dream realm. He is battling a dream that wants to stay the in our world. Basically, it wants to stay there, and it's like dreams don't seldom. There's a great line about dreams seldom survive in the waking world, but nightmares seem to thrive there. And I thought this was really, really good. So basically, you start off seeing Dream, and they change the name, and it's Lucian. So Lucian is one of the first gender and race swapped characters that we kind of have to get to. And I kind of let me see, hit the wrong button. Let me hit this real quick and share the screen for you so you kind of at least have an idea of what we're talking about. This, I guess I can say it matters less in the sense of impact to the story that Vivian Archaeampong is Lucian, and that's been changed. I'll say that she just looks like a lady that's cosplaying as the character rather than being the character to me. Like he is odd, he is quirky, he's got elf ears, he has these sort of different things. She just looks like she's wearing men's clothes and cosplaying. Like it never connects for me like at all. And even though she tries to come across and she's I guess reasonably successful as being an enduring character, it it was like the first like moment where I'm kind of like I don't quite know what I'm supposed to do here. Why am I supposed to look at how great of an adaptation that you're making? Then you do stuff like this where it doesn't make any sense. Like it's not even the character it's supposed to be, and then you kind of move through quickly where you really are following this whole thing where you have Dr. Hathaway and Roderick Burgess, and he's leader of this like cult and this underground thing about ancient mysteries, and they're trying to basically capture death, because if you capture death, they were going to try to figure out how to bring back their lost children. So Hathaway had lost a son, so he was motivated to help this cult leader do this. And Burgess is crazy. He lost a son recently, and he hates his other kid. He treats his other kid like crap, which you'll get to. That's Alex. And so you have that piece developing, and then you have Dream, who is after Corinthian, the nightmare. Dream creates dreams and nightmares, but Corinthian escapes into our world and basically behaves as a serial killer. And you have sort of backdrop of what's happening there. and he can't. Um, it's interesting to see how this kind of goes, and them trying to get the satchel of sand and the red jewel, and they pull off this ceremony thinking they caught death, but in fact they caught Dream. And you have the Sandman mask there. You have all of this stuff. They basically have all of his stuff, and they take it. And you see basically attributed to, because Dream is captured, you have people that are dying and being attributed to sleeping sickness. And I think, millions being dead and all that, it was really a cool tie-in, and the show is doing a pretty good adaptation of the timelines and the general essence of the story, even though a lot of pieces have kind of been tweaked and messed around with a little bit. For instance, like even the Raven has been changed, like Jessamy the Raven has been changed because he didn't come around. That's not even like until like 2 years into the series. There's a one of the stories is called Distant Mirrors, and that's where that Raven comes into play. And you also have like I believe that's where Joanna Constantine is around that same time frame. They're going to make this major change later. So anyway, we fast forward, and you see how the sleeping sickness is being spread, and Alex lets someone. This woman that shows up at a party that they're holding, and she basically kind of like swoons on Alex, and he gets in, and he offers to watch Dream. But anyway, long story short, is this is where Burgess walks in and thinks Alex is going to free him. Anyway, long story short, Alex shoots and kills the Raven, and Dream is not going to forget that. So when we time jump again later on, that's a big issue. And there's no Dream, so then you have people that are attributing like an encephalitis outbreak. They're asleep without ever waking up. And you have this woman that's kind of come into their lives who basically is pregnant, and Burgess doesn't want another kid, and she basically just leaves. She steals money, and she steals all of Dream's belongings, which is crucial to the story. And Dream never talks, refuses to interact with Burgess, and there's this big fight that's going on, and basically Burgess ends up dying because Alex walks in the room to get into this big fight. And Ethel has a son, and she has all of Dream's stuff. And then we fast forward, and you have Alex, who's gay, brings Paul to see Dream, and looking for a promise. And Dream's revealing how, I'm not ever going to forget you murdered my Raven, which is all fine. So we have this time jump, and what ends up happening is during this process with Paul and Alex, they break the seal around there. So now Dream has a way to get out, and one of the guards has to fall asleep. And when he does, he dreams about being on vacation, that kind of thing. So Dream can get away. He has some sand. He can get away, blows the sand on the guards, and Dream's out. And Dream's out because you have Alex being caught in this world and that kind of thing, basically stuck into like eternal sleep. So Corinthian knows this, and now there's like, what are we going to do? And Corinthian's really kind of done well in the beginning. Like, he's creepy. Eyes are cut out. The eyes are cut out of the victim. He doesn't have eyes, right? That's kind of part of his shtick. And at the end, you sort of have like the kingdom has been ruined. It's decayed. It's a mess. And everybody left. And dreams and nightmares are everywhere in the waking world. He's lost control of everything. And that's how episode 1 ends. And episode 1, it was pretty good. I had, like I said, I kind of had an issue with some of it structurally with the original source material, but it wasn't terrible. But then when you get to the second episode, it starts to kind of get more crazy. It starts to get, so Morpheus returns. There's a lot of chaos, and they got to figure out how to put everything back together, but he's so weak, he has to figure out a way to get power again. He only gets power if he can reabsorb something that he created, right? So he goes to Cain and Abel. So Cain and Abel, literally lifted right out of the Bible, first murderer, first victim. And they're basically in this endless cycle where Cain's always murdering Abel, by the way. And there's also the backstory of Corinthian visiting Ethel, because Ethel's the one that took all of Dream's stuff. Corinthian's like, well, I have to kill Dream so I can keep existing. That's the only way, because he can reabsorb Corinthian. So it is up to Dream to come up with this plan to summon the three fates. If you remember, like the Hercules cartoon where you had the three little old ladies in the eye, so the past, future, and present. You can ask one question, but it's always a trick. He does that to basically kind of get clues of where all of his stuff is. And Lucien's like warning about how bad things have been, how bad things are, and all of that. And I'm not getting Lucien at all in episode 2. Like it was bad in episode 1 and it derails more. Like I am not connecting. I'm just like, this isn't even the right character. It doesn't feel right. The vibe is really wrong. And you start to have all of these little pieces of who has what, who has the amulet, who has his mask, the helm, who has the ruby, because the ruby went from Ethel to John, the kid. And the sand went from John to Joanna Constantine. So they change a lot of things because we were introduced to this John character, Ethel's son, and this mental, he's completely different. He's not the same. It's like they don't want to be who they really are. It was such a letdown. And then to know that they change Joanna Constantine. And this was really a hard thing for me too, because I thought they said the story was going to center around Joanna Constantine, not John Constantine. Like they were going to work around that part of the story, when in fact, no, that's not at all what they did. It's a full on gender swap. In the comic book, there's 2 separate characters, and Joanna comes along much later in the story. She's less relevant. Instead, they're going to change John into Joanna for this story. So now I'm ticked off. So because I have one character here, one character, you're trying to tell me how you're adapting my source material. You're making me like my source material, but then you're changing things that are undoing and contradicting what you're trying to set out to do. You're trying to say I adapted this and source material, but then you're radically changing something. Like Joanne Constantine and John Constantine are not the same character. There's a radical difference between the two. Anyway, Corinthian's talking to Ethel, their schemes, what are they going to do? And, she's talked about having, the amulet to ward him off and different. So all this is playing out. And meanwhile, Dream visits Cain and Abel. And in doing that, he had to absorb something that he created, which I mentioned. And that turned out to be their pet gargoyle, Gregory. This was reasonably okay. It wasn't changed too much. And again, you have whole, Cain murders Abel climbs out of the grave kind of stuff. And then it ends. And again, some of this stuff is right out of the comic book. So why make changes, right? So that's how they get this new egg. Dream replaces the egg for them. So they have Gregory, instead of having Gregory, then they have the new egg, which is Goldie. So I don't quite understand why John D is not a monster. John needs to be a monster. He needs to be totally crazy. Lupin is a great actor. That's who this is. This is David Thewlis. I think it's how you say his name, Thewlis. Anyway, from Harry Potter, he plays Lupin. He's such a great actor. This would have been such an amazing. There's a couple different ways they could have done it that would have worked, right? And it just really bothers me they didn't do it. It ends and you have Corinthian going to where the kingdom is, and you have Dream going to London. The story's going to pick up with Dream trying to get everything. And I'm checking out. And the main reason I'm checking out is because the next phase of the story, in addition to the Joanna Constantine thing, has to do with the biggest change of all, has to do that they change Death. So Death is his older sister, and his older sister looks like a teen girl, right? This is her at the top, right? And this is how they do. They pull right out of the comic book, like them sitting on a bench and chatty, and their chatty chat. And it's like, well, this is Death. Now, Death is not a white girl. Death is white, like the color white. Like she's not drawn around other humans as though she's normal. She's drawn as white. This is how she normally looks. And she will take the form of other people and characters when it fits the story. But this is her essence. So for no reason, again, we race swap her into this. And I look at this woman, I know this is coming, this is death. And I'm like, that is not death. I cannot. So now we have two major characters with John Constantine and Death that are so radically changed. And I keep asking myself if this doesn't bother you. Are you telling me that if they adapted Harry Potter and they radically changed characters, you're going to be okay with it? You know, think about the franchise or the thing that matters to you and ask yourself if, yeah, the main character might look about the same. And yeah, they're trying to adapt the story. But then you have these other characters that really do matter and they radically change them and you're okay with that. And by the way, let me ask you if you'd be okay if it was done the other direction. Like if we did a Blade adaptation, but you know, we have a white guy, you know, I think there should be something that stays true to the source material because you paid and bought the source material. If they wanted to cast this woman as another character, I don't understand why you didn't just have her another character. Even if you make up characters and you add them into the story, there are plenty of roles that could have been sort of focused more on or less on. And I don't know. Again, I hate sounding like this because I just sound like a senseless hater in a lot of ways, but at the same time, it just made me lose my interest. I really just lost interest in wanting to watch the show. Look at the detail they go into. I got this one photo where you see a side by side of him with the helmet, the comic book version versus his version, and it's okay. I was fine with him as Morpheus in some of the shots. And they spent so much money on costuming and details and structure and putting all this together just to create other things that are radically changed for no reason at all, but are dramatically distracting and derail the functionality and the efficiency of the story and the storytelling. So anyway, that's my situation. Maybe you think I should carry on. Maybe you're like, I can't believe you made it this far, Pops. Other people have been talking about Sandman on and off. It doesn't seem to have legs because Netflix doesn't understand that if you drop something, everyone that wants to watch it will binge it in a couple days, and there's no like longevity. Only if it's super, super good, like Stranger Things season 4, do people keep talking about it. So because it's not super good, it's all kind of fallen to the wayside. So I don't know if I'm going to go back and watch more Sandman, or maybe it'll be a few weeks from now and I'll talk about Sandman again. It's like the comic book. It's a very slow burn, a slow dramatic show. It is odd. Most of the other elements are pretty good, but like I said, you have these characters that are not the characters. So it's very difficult if you're a fan of it that you want to stay invested because it's not the character that you're looking to on screen. And I know that may offend certain people, but reality is I think they have to ask themselves, what franchise are you most committed to that you really enjoy? And imagine if it was being adapted and radically changed like that, would you be cool with it? And I don't think you would be. So anyway, like I said, I always welcome the comments. I welcome the feedback. Feel free to tell me what you think. I appreciate everything. I'm Pops. Thank you so much for spending time with me.